For Americans, Abraham Lincoln was holy. Francis Ford, John Ford's brother, played Lincoln in 8 movies in the early teens, usually pardoning people. And Lincoln appears in 6 John Ford movies.
Old friend, what would you do?
The year of young Mr. Lincoln, 1939, was also the year of Capra's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. James Stewart communes with Lincoln to revive his faith. As did 250,000 blacks in 1963, when Martin Luther King promised, "I have a dream." Said Henry Fonda, playing Lincoln was like playing God. In fact, it hadn't been true, what Lincoln said at Gettysburg, that 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth a nation dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. But Lincoln made it true. He freed 4 million slaves. He made America mean freedom. As our movie sings out.
Yes, we'll rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
In actuality, Lincoln's opposition to the spread of slavery violated the U.S. Constitution and started a war. 700,000 dead. Slavery is not an explicit issue in young Mr. Lincoln. There were no slaves in Illinois in the 1830s. But in young Lincoln, we sense already the great emancipator.
I may not know so much of law, Mr. Felder, but I know what's right and what's wrong.
How's he so certain that he knows what's right and what's wrong? What about a president who claims God told him to invade Iraq? What about Southerners who sang the same song? They also shouted freedom. Freedom to own slaves. Southerners, like D.W. Griffith, depicted Lincoln as a hammer, dwelling in dark forests, a lout, a monkey.
I'm the big buck of this lick.
Ford, in contrast, gives the line to the lynch mob,
I'm the biggest buck in this lick.
which Ford's Lincoln defeats with boyish charm. Whence comes his certitude?
Books? Law.
It's like a miracle.
Law.
The certitude comes from trees, river, air, woman.
Hello, Mr. Lincoln. Abe?
The shots of painting, Anne's figure, the river and trees, her flowers project overwhelming sexuality. Magic strikes in other Ford movies, too. Desire catches flame in the space between.
I'll prepare a room for you.
The space between. And the barriers. Clementine is not for Wyatt, nor is Anne for Abe. But Anne has a mission. She lets him pass her portal. Tells him what to do. then disappears. Her leaving the frame portends her death and leaves him with his destiny. The setting suggests Providence is watching over Lincoln, and then Anne materializes above him.
Hello, Mr. Lincoln. Abe?
The tree branch is there for the same reason Anne is, a passageway for Providence. Anne is a guiding angel, the tree's providential. And she will guide Abe, even beyond death, through a tree branch. The branches are leafless when things are bleakest, yet still watching over, and then in bloom at victory. They recur at key moments. Leaves play in the movie's titles. Do they suggest Abe's mother is watching over him? Is Abigail her surrogate? She gives him the books.
You know, my mother, Nancy Hanks, would be just about your age if she was alive. Got an idea she'd be a whole lot like you, too. A whole lot like you.
Abe's life is full of surrogates.
Sarah, I bet you didn't know I had a sister once, just about your age. Named Sarah, too. Only she died when her baby was born. And I knew a girl like you, Carrie Sue. Named Anne. Anne died, too.
Their having died makes them more real somehow. We are one with our dead, as often in Ford. We are one with people living, too. Abe and people connect with wide-eyed openness. Carrie Sue has a wonderful scene. It plays like a ballet. "10 seconds immerse me in the manners and formalities of a culture, of how people are connected." This is what's special about John Ford. Abigail curtsies too. Carrie Sue several times. Mary Todd's movements parody Carrie Sue's. The ingenuous becomes imperious.
Mr. Lincoln, in the part of the South I come from, it's customary for a gentleman to ask a visiting lady to dance. Wouldn't you care to ask me? Mr. Lincoln, I shall be very glad to dance this dance with you.
She runs off, commanding he follow. And again.
Shall we go outside and talk instead of dancing, Mr. Lincoln?
I'd be delighted, ma'am.
She turns back to glance he's obeying. Her flirt, leaving the frame and forcing Abe to follow, resembles Grace Kelly's flirt in Mogambo.
Have you ever been married, Mr. Malsworth?
But in competition with Abe's destiny, the leaves, the river, and Mary retreats. And she ends up curtsying too. As foretold in her first exchange of eyes with Abe.
Morning, Miss Edwards. Ninian?
Watch your eyes.
Morning, Mr. Douglas.
Mr. Lincoln.
How are you, Miss Ricketts? Ladies?
Watch his eyes.
Nice parade, Ninian.
Mary, this is Mr. Abraham Lincoln. This is my sister who's just come up from Lexington to visit us, Miss Mary Todd.
Watch his eyes. Abe is startled by Douglas. The triangle, all with eyes. Abe can't help staring. Mary flirts. With Douglas, the situation is clear and combat instant, and combat continues throughout the movie. Now, Abe's embarrassed. She's triumphant. Here's the scene again.
This is my sister who's just come up from Lexington to visit us, Miss Mary Todd.
Lincoln himself is mesmerizing physically. His peculiar gait, his sensuous body is a ballet.
This house certainly takes me back to the time when I was just a little old shirt-tail boy in Kentucky.
We seize every body movement. Time weighs. The movie shows the seeds of destiny of the man to come. We know the answers to his mother's questions, and our knowing history puts everything outside time for us, spinning together past, present, future. Lincoln seems to sense his destiny and to choose it.
Wonder if I could have tipped it your way just a little.
Lincoln is self-made.
You've educated yourself. You've read poetry and Shakespeare and now law.
He's ambitious.
I've been solicited by many friends to become a candidate for the legislature. I'm your lawyer, ma'am. Well, Steve, I don't reckon either of us better underrate each other. From here in.
He's strong. He can be self-righteous.
I may not know so much of law, Mr. Felder, but I know what's right and what's wrong.
He can be mocking.
Well, if it's all the same to you, I'll just call you Jackass.
He can be imperious.
Did you ever hear about the time in the Black Hawk War when I butted two fellas' heads together and busted both of them? Now, gentlemen, I'm not up here to make any speeches.
Don't you know?
Enough of that.
He's willing to break rules to win. He doesn't dance to convention's tune. He glories in victory over the lynch mob. In contrast to Judge Priest.
I gotta get my heart started.
Yet he senses what's right in people who are without guile. And he senses what's wrong in people who wear masks.
I didn't lie.
Oh, yes, you did. It's as plain as a nose on your face.
Yet who killed Scrub Wright remains a mystery. Even though we all watched every second of the actual murder, none of us knows what we saw. Without higher knowledge, we are lost. As usual in Ford, traditions designed to sustain communities now imperil them. The law threatens the Clay family, as the Constitution would threaten the Union. But higher knowledge does come from the moon.
But the moon was only in its first quarter that night and set at 10:21.
Higher knowledge given by yet another guiding angel and plucked from a magic hat.
Look at this.
Ford makes a joke of Lincoln's famous hat. Yet along with the tree branches and the river, the hat foreshadows Abe's destiny. So the hat crowns his triumph. And once again, eyes tell the story. And eyes again. Lincoln is typical of the Fordian hero. His higher knowledge thwarts a lynching and a hanging, and saves a family, as he will save the nation. At the end, he goes off alone, a sacrifice. Unhappy the land that needs a hero. Unhappy the hero. The thrust in young Mr. Lincoln is passage of help from above. Passage between people. Passage through portals. Passage toward destiny. Passage from youth to man. Passage from man to monument.